Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I want to start off with a different type of video from my farm. So this is from last night. Okay, so my wife and I were going for a walk, and there was a rabbit. Like, we have a garden area, we have like a container garden area, and then there was a rabbit ahead of us. So I was getting ready to videotape it. I got my phone out to take a video, and there's a rabbit that we saw a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and it was just sitting there staring at me and my wife, and it was like 5 feet away. And by the time I got my phone out, it took off. And so I was getting my phone out to video a rabbit that was ahead of us, and then this other rabbit comes tearing by with our dog Tulsi chasing it. Let me show you in slow motion. So I had my camera out, and I see this thing tearing out of it, tearing by us. And the rabbit goes by us, and then Tulsi is going to come into the picture here. Right. And they're flying. They're going really fast, both of them. Then Buddy, if I had kept the camera on, we would have seen Buddy go by as well. Papillons are very athletic, fast dogs. They always surprise me at how athletic and fast they are for little dogs. They're like they're good little athletes. They're foxes. And Buddy's even faster than Tulsi. Tulsi's has more of a killer instinct. And even with him being that fast, one time my wife and I were walking on the beach when we were on vacation with our dogs. Some guy said, "Those Papillons," and I said, "Yeah." He said his wife raised some sort of dogs that are in the same sort of dog class as the Papillons, and he was talking about how his wife's dogs can never beat these Papillons. They do some sort of they do this agility competition. If you see the Papillons run these courses, I mean, they're so quick and they're so athletic, but they can't ever catch these bunnies. I mean, the bunnies usually have a head start, and the bunnies run idiosyncratically. A number of times they'll chase a bunny into we have a field now. It grows progressively over the summer, and now it's about up 3 or 4 feet high, and they chase the bunnies into this this thick grass, thick weeds. And we have these trails that I've made, and the bunny will come out of the trail and walk right past us, and the dogs are still sniffing and chasing it somewhere. So, but it's quite humorous. Bunnies are kind of cute, and the dogs are cute. So I wanted to. This is going to go in the Journey series as well. Kind of a follow up to my voiceover from I think my last video. The neediness of people these days because of people aren't getting natural, wholesome, human to human contact, spiritual nutrition, whatever you want to call it, from their parents and from society and their relationships with other people and nature itself. So people are living lives that are inorganic lives, unnatural lives. And because of that, there is like a need to be fed something, right? Like that, Donald Trump being a prime example of that, like Madonna and Will Smith, these famous people that need the, energy from the audience and need money and need. The other thing is like everybody has like this void or hole inside of them. And if you don't have God's love, and if you don't feel good about yourself, like you're not on your spiritual path, there's always going to be, trouble sleeping, nightmares, psychological aberrations, and all these types of things. So when you're living an unnatural life, you're not following, you're not here, you're not fulfilling your purpose, you're going in the wrong direction. You're going in an egotistical, undivine direction, going against your soul's path, creating more problems for yourself. You have this love energy. It's called prana. In Chinese medicine and acupuncture, it's called jing. They have this life energy. And it's like a creative force. And, there's various things that are of a spiritual nature. And you have so much love, like a love bank. And as you go through life, the love bank gets depleted. And so that's why there's this Pranhuiti in the sajark system, this transmission that you get. Because it's something that you know, as I've said this before, that quite a bit, that you can go without food for like 30, 40 days, whatever it is. You can go without water for 3, 4 days. You can go without breathing for, 10, 15 minutes, whatever the maximum thing is. But you can't exist a second without God's love. There's this divine energy you need it's the very, building block for the essence of your life force and your soul. And so if you don't have that, you get depleted, you get desperate, and people need to then find ways to extract love energy from material possessions or, successes or whatever it is, like things that have, there's love energy in everything. Even, everything has love at its basis. And then you have vampire-like people out there who no longer have the ability to give love, but they try to, in some kind of a vampire-ish, ghoulish way, extract it from other people, right? So I'm very painfully aware of this, that people are lost. They talk about how when you're trying to save a drowning person, they'll try to drag you down with them, right? They're so desperate. And most people are drowning in their toxicity and their love energy has been withdrawn from them, and they don't know how to get it, and they're not willing to figure it out. And even if you give them the tools to, people come and do the sajark system and get the Pranhuiti energy, and they feel somewhat better, and then they reject it because there's like a thing that happens to people where they start feeding off the negative. That they want nutritious food, but they're eating toxic shit, and they get addicted to the toxic shit. And then when they try to feed them nutritious food, or if they come across nutritious food, they reject it. Their body no longer recognizes their being no longer recognizes what's good for them, and they just go for the fucking toxin. They're constantly looking for feed on toxic shit because they've been warped in some way, to feed on demonic shit. And they no longer want wholesome stuff. They no longer want something that's pure. They no longer want anything that's good. There was an old movie about Richard Nixon. I think Ed Harris played one of those dudes, Ehrlich and Halderman, or one of those guys. The guys that one of those guys that was, one of the scumbag guys that went to jail. And he said Nixon was the darkness reaching out for the darkness, which is something you could say about Trump, right? Trump is the darkness reaching out for the darkness. But you could say that about a lot of people. I saw this, I showed this clip, and it's one of my Madonna videos, and I probably should have saved it because I don't like search that hard for things. But it was a time where young Madonna was on Oprah Winfrey's show, and I really didn't like Madonna from the get-go, when she was popular and, in my youth, back when MTV was a thing and they played music videos and, all that stuff for reality TV. And I never watched Oprah because why would I? But somehow I watched Madonna on Oprah, and I don't know if an old girlfriend or something was watching it. I don't know why why I even have this memory. But she said something about she needing to be fed by her audience. I really need to receive, like she had these big audiences. And of course, when I named her Madam Expiration Date, it was because, she was vampirish in her need for low vibrational energy in the form of a crowd, right? People who really need to feed off the crowd and their fans and these things, And now with social media, you have people who are needing to be fed. Like a lot of people are on social media for the very same reason. They're looking to be fed by other people, in terms of the appreciation, but then they get the haters. And they start paying attention to the haters more than the people that are their fans. And, it becomes something where if you're looking for some validation, emotional validation, then you're not going to last long on social media. You're not going to, and people in the truth community particularly, because the system already doesn't like you. as a truther. They don't want you. At one point they did. They didn't care what your beliefs were as long as you were bringing in eyeballs to their platforms. But now, of course, everything is prejudiced and rigged against truthers, and now they have these, these dumbass Trumpers and QBs and people who will more than, the dumb fucks that will carry the stuff on the, on social media. There's more energy in their movement than doing, valid research and making thoughtful videos. And, people just don't want that shit. They want immediate stimulation. They want lowbrow shit. They want emotion. They want, whatever. And Trump gives it to them. And, people who follow his, his lead on social media being Trumper truthers, pretty much wrecked the truth community. So, with all that stuff that happened with the flat earth and these other things, it just fucking brought the dumbasses out, right? to stupefy the truth community. So, you see that there's lots of truthers who had a following, had an audience, and maybe were making some money, whatever it was. And they all disappeared because they're looking for validation, and, when there is none. Like, there's just a lot of hate, a lot of dumbasses, and a lot of whatever. And so, you can't be looking for that. And I was aware of that early on. That really didn't mean anything. Like, you get 100 thumbs up. What does that even mean? Like, how does that translate to a currency, right? That, is, I mean, it's good when people leave comments and say that my videos are helpful and, whatever it might be. And that it, in some sincere way that's, there's lots of people who will say things like that. I don't have the time to check this out so much anymore, but occasionally I do. I have people who are longtime listeners to the show, or people who made friends with me on Facebook and told me how much they love the show, and then I would go to their personal Facebook page, and they would have posts from other truthers, and not from Pockets of the Future, right? So, and I used to talk about how I'm people's dirty little secret, because, and I'm glad that there's other truthers. Like, this isn't like a competition, because, the truth movement and having a wide variety of voices out there is a good thing, just like with, spirituality. Except, there's a significant difference in what I do here. And unlike almost every other truther, I am not about changing the system. Pretty much every other truther channel is about changing the system, or taking it down, or whatever it might be, but without a plan to make it better. And I'm not about any of those things. I'm not about the system at all. The system is the system, and it'll go extinct on its own. We don't have to do anything. It's ungodly. And everything dies anyway, right? So, I mean, I'm not about any of those types of things, taking down individuals, and, it's just, it's a waste of my time. I was going to talk about time as currency in a moment here, but it's a waste of my time to do any of that kind of stuff. What I've learned over the years, and sajark system is the best system for this, even though the majority of people who do the method, the sajark method of meditation, never embrace this. It's about finding out what God's will is and cooperating with it. And so this is a little bit different. Like in the Western culture, in America and Europe, we're taught to impose our will, to be demanding, right? The squeakiest wheel gets the grease. Be demanding, force things, force yourself. You hear like in sports, they're like, oh, the guy's letting the game come to him, which is it's praised, but it's not, you also hear is, players dominating. He's imposing his will, which is, more thought about. Donald Trump is an imposing the will type of person, and just, bending the rules and everything, the agenda to his bogus plans, right? In America and Europe, that's rewarded, like sociopathic behavior, imposing your will on God's plans, God's design. And people go to church and they do religious worship, or they become spiritual, the Oprah Winfrey type of New Age spirituality, where they're trying to use their spiritual self, their spiritual side, to make their lives better, which is the opposite. That's demonic. that's egotistical. That's the you're not a spiritual person at all. You realize that you have a soul. You realize there's God, and you want to manipulate that that reality into a better life for yourself. And that's bullshit. It's like the wrong fucking way. It's the opposite way to go about anything. And so in terms of the truthers, they want to get to the truth and expose the the bullshit lies of the system, and then make a system based on what they think it should be. And all these truthers have different ideologies and mentality, and they want to impose their will on something that's take something bad and then make it into something that they think it should be like, and it's always the wrong stuff. It's not, it's not God's will. And you have all these people out there on social media and whatever, it is, trying to manipulate people and build the movement and get bogus information out there, their view of reality out there, and then try to, make that manifest in some way. And, there's minor success, right? But if you watch TV shows and movies where it's about espionage, or it's about like some individual whistleblower, there are a lot of movies like this. There's an individual whistleblower who has some damning information, and the powers that be are trying to kill the person. Because if the person speaks the truth, everything will topple, the whole system. It's fucking stupid, because we know that's not the case, right? This InfoWars Alex Jones model. We know people don't give a shit, and even if they care, all they'll do is post shit on the internet. The internet has been great for information, but it's been devastating for action. And protests don't fucking work. So, like, getting out and having a tantrum with a bunch of your fucking stupid buddies, your pals, and thinking that you're changing anything, that you're upset about something, that holding up signs in some busy, crowded place and preventing people from getting to their jobs or getting home. I talked about how I worked in the 5-college area. There's 5 colleges in UMass, and UMass is one of them, University of Massachusetts. I lived in Amherst, and I lived in other places in that area. So it's a place in Massachusetts where there's 5 colleges: Smith, UMass, Mount Holyoke, and 2 other ones I can't remember. It's called the 5-college area, and it's very liberal. And I was driving home from work, and we lived in a cockroach-infested apartment, and my ex was somebody who was a perpetual victim because of her childhood abuse, and she was just always falling apart. And my kids, 4 kids in a small apartment, 6 kids at that point, because she had 2 from a previous marriage, and we were in this it was just a bad time. I was working at a treatment center with sex offenders getting underpaid to do a real shitty job, the dregs of society. And I'm driving home, and they're like, kids are sick, and I have to get home, and I'm leaving a stressful job to go to a stressful family life. And there's these fucking UMass students protesting the Iraq War. So this is like 2003. And they're right in the center of Amherst. It's like this fucking liberal-ass place. Everyone who lived in there is against the war. And they're walking the streets, and they're blocking my one road to get home. I can't fucking, like there's no other way for me, and I'm boxed in by traffic. And I'm like just hating these kids, of course now I'm like more mature about things like that, but still the protests suck. And they're all smiles. They're all, they're not like upset by the atrocities and the million Iraqis are going to get killed. They're just out there, doing their thing, voicing their fucking stupid ass opinions about something that everybody in that region agrees with. And they're just stupid, right? So there's people haven't figured out how to really change things. And it starts with changing yourself, which is another thing people don't want to hear. Like, you want to change Trump, or you want to get to the truth about Epstein. None of that shit's going to fucking lead to anything. Just going down the fucking rabbit hole of depravity and all the bullshit. Like, at some point you should know that the system's corrupt and people are fucked up, and the people that run the system are, worse than everybody else, but everyone else is just as bad in the sense of, on their level, they're just, they're bad on their level. And everyone's going in the wrong fucking direction. And we're disconnected from the divinity within us and what it's like to be a natural human being. And the system is completely fucked. And that there has to be drastic changes. And for most people, they wouldn't survive those changes. And so we're all, we're all dependent on the system. Some part of us that wants to, keep our comforts and keep our life the way it is and doesn't want drastic change, is hoping for some fucking truth or miracle that doesn't exist, right? And it's just, is submitting to God's will. Figuring out what God wants in the situation, and God doesn't want, God, the divine plan. What is it? What needs to happen? And once you kind of think about it, just ask those questions, God will give you the answer. It's obvious, right? Fucking right in front of your fucking face, right? The answers of things that you have to change about your own personal self and your own personal life, what you need to do to get right with God. And that's the most important thing. And then what needs to happen for everyone else to get right with God. And clearly the system has to go for that to happen. I mean, the system is taking people in the wrong direction and, all these things, right? And so, people resist the divinity within them. I say this all the time. People are scared of the demon within them, their dark side, but they're a lot more scared of the possible saint inside of them. And, the spiritual qualities that exist in some people. Some people just, they're first timers. They're coming from a lower place and they've moved up to becoming a human. Wherever they were before, in the animal kingdom, whatever they were, they are, moving up. And then there's higher developed souls that on the etheric plane of existence, they're already beyond the human, whatever human beings are at. And they come in to do God's work. And they're killed and fucking tortured and, no one wants to listen to them. And they fucking, after they're dead, people are like, I think that guy was a saint. I think we probably made a mistake. And let's go look at his teachings, Jesus being a prime example of this shit. But, and Christians particularly, because, white people, Europeans, Christians, Americans, are very hard on saintly spiritual people because they're so, they're like Trump-esque and they want to impose their will on God. And when someone comes up and says, yeah, God doesn't want any of the shit you want, oh yeah, then fuck you, kill him. Like that's, nobody wants to hear from God. People in the Western culture don't want to hear from God. And so they're about imposing their will. And people in the East, they're very fatalistic. They surrender to God, don't try to do anything. Your destiny is your destiny. Find out whatever your destiny is and just embrace it. They're very passive. And they want to submit to God's will, but in a very passive way. And so what I'm talking about is something completely different. This is the sajark, the essence of the sajark system, where you find out what God's will is, and then use your own will to align with God's will. And so you participate. So you're not passive, but you're not pushing your own agenda. And, I see this all the time. Like people, I mean, there are great people that come to my YouTube channel, people who will either donate money, without a big deal about it, whatever it is, they'll, leave helpful links and comments that enhance the videos, say relevant things that help, add information to the videos, and make the comments section worth reading. Will send me links, on Instagram and other places that are things I can actually use in a video. There's things like that. And they're just, they're very, there's people like this, a lot of them in the sajark organization who just do the good, the work that needs to be done without looking for pats on the back, without, needing fucking attention, needing to be fed, needing validation, needing to be seen. The people who just keep a system going and they do it anonymously and they just do their duty for God and or their country or whatever they believe in. They do the work without any fanfare, whatever. They keep people don't even know about them, but they're like crucial, important people. Trump was firing those people left and right when he brought in Elon Musk without really knowing, just uncurious, like just whatever it is. And so they're just the good people that keep things going. There's people like that in the family that hold the family together, and they do it without anybody really appreciating it or thanking or even seeing that they're doing it, right? These kind of people. And there's people like that here. And I appreciate those people, and they don't need my appreciation because they're, Master Chargy famously said in the sajark system that when you work for God, the reward is more work and higher work. you get promoted to do more work. It's not financial, remuneration. Remuneration. It's not financial compensation. It's not, pats on the back. It's not certificates and awards and glory. You do it because it feels good to do what you're supposed to do. You find out what your soul wants you to do, and you do it. It feels good. It feels good whatever you're doing, following your soul's path. There's just there's like no other feeling like it. When you find the, my wife and I are watching this show called The Lazarus Project, right? And spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about the show, and it just went south during the second season. We started watching it, and we had trouble with the accents. Maybe we didn't love the first couple episodes, but the good part of the show was that they've developed these stopping points where July 1st is a day where they have backstops. And if the world's destroyed, they go back to July 1st. And they have whatever period of time to solve the problem and prevent it from happening. And so they have multiple chances. It's a little bit like reincarnation. They have multiple chances to save the world. And they keep on going back to July 1st until they save the world, right? But there's problems with that. Like if they get pregnant, like this one woman gets pregnant and she's like hours away from giving birth, and they have to send the thing back to July 1st, and then she's lost the baby. And like she's pretty devastated. She's part of their crew. And these people are conscious of it, right? So it's an interesting story line. In the first season, they do a good job of showing all the different characters' stories, based in this time period. And it takes really good writing to do that, like to execute those different storylines and intermingle them. And it was interesting. We enjoyed the show. And then we were going to watch it again, and it used to be on TNT, and then they didn't. I forgot about the show, but then they put it on Netflix with the second season. And the second season, the first season ends with this guy who's kind of a new guy he's like, maybe the comic relief, and he's kind of the star of the show. And he's with this girl, and they showed how they got together during these timelines. And then she's killed in a stupid way. She gets hit by a bus. And he had saved her life in a previous timeline and forgot to do it in the next one. And so he's desperately trying to reset everything, even though it goes against the rules of this little club, right? And he kills all kinds of people. He does all kinds of shit, sets off a nuclear bomb to reset everything. And he gets away with it till the end of the first season. Second season, everybody's pissed at him. And then he gives his girlfriend the shot. And she wakes up, and she had dumped him anyway. And then a big part of the second season's about whether or not they're meant to be together. And he thinks that they are, and she's just horrible. She treats him like shit. She's horrible. And me and my wife are like, just fucking, this idea that, if she doesn't get it, then it's not destiny, right? Like it takes both people to see that they're soulmates. Otherwise, you're not, right? If one person refuses to see it, you have to convince them. And they do all this kind of weird manipulation. It has, there's the fucking world's burning. And they have this weird fucking, on again, off again relationship with two kind of annoying people that, neither one of them deserves to be happy. But there's another character who's the father of the baby that was lost, and he realizes this thing's bogus because the world has ended like hundreds of times in a short period of period of 5 to 10 years. And he's like, you know what? Why we're just preventing the inevitable. And, and it's time travel is always shitty, right? Because it's people want to go back and change things that they did in the past, right? They want to redo mistakes. I mean, that's almost always, whether it's their own mistakes or historical mistakes. And, that's why time is linear on planet Earth, because consequences have to be there. You always get a chance to redeem yourself because the situation's going to come back around. If you failed in, one capacity and you've made mistakes, then you have a second chance. If it isn't in this life, it's in a future life. But the way that you act, there's a finality to it. That you do whatever you do, and then you have consequences for those actions. And breaking the cycle is something you can do in the present, not going back and redoing something in the past. That's why time travel is fucking stupid. And they always end. These movies and TV shows about time travel. It always ends the same way. Yeah, you can't fix it. You just make more fucking problems. You just compound the problem by trying to go back and fix something that, a mistake that you made. It's always that, because that's, of course, the way it is. That's truth. And so the answer to all this is that you figure out what you're supposed to do now, and you do it. You've become what you're supposed to become. And it isn't all that hard. And the sajark system helps people. Gratefulness meditation helps people find that and execute that. But even people who did the system, I talk about this. There are saintly people who had past lives as, higher developed souls that have been a part of these movements. I know that from my own, whatever past life experiences I've had, which are very subtle, they're not like concrete. It's like you get a whiff of something. But I know I've been involved in some of these movements before, and they're all failed movements. Humanity takes higher developed teachings from some spiritual being and perverts them to make it into some bullshit religion like we have now. And, humanity just fucking sucks. And, there's a point where there has to be like, all right, you guys are either going to go up or you're going to go down. You can't stay the same. You can't keep on doing this bullshit. And we've reached that point, right? And so, people have to embrace their higher nature, and I just don't see it. At least now, maybe when the system collapses, and they're somewhat forced to do it, and that sucks. You have an opportunity. Everything's better when you do it by choice. When everything is against you doing something and you do it anyway, because it's the right thing to do. And people have that chance right now and won't take it. And that's, and I've kind of realized I can't do anything about it. I have to just, pursue my own difficulties, my own struggle, battles with my own ego and my own, whatever, my own desires or whatever it is. And, people are just desperate. A couple things happened. When I went to that dentist, and I think this dentist, if he's right, we'll see tomorrow I go into the radiologist was going to examine my x-rays, and we'll see how this guy pans out. But, his assistant wished me a happy birthday. It was the 18th of August, and my birthday's on July 7th. Happy belated birthday. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't want you to wish my happy birthday on my birthday, but, like, I'm not, I don't care. I'm not, like, hoping, I'm going to the dentist's office. I hope they see it's my birthday. And why would I be going to the fucking dentist's office for my birthday? And so, but I don't go there hoping that happens. And then the fucking dentist goes, oh, happy belated birthday. I'm like, it's like 6 weeks. Like, yeah, happy belated birthday to you also, or future birthday, depending on where we are if we're 6 months, then both. If we're the midpoint between, your last birthday and your next birthday, then yeah, happy birthday, happy belated birthday, and happy future birthday. I mean, just fucking, otherwise, whatever we're closest to, right? It's just silly. I mean, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, right? And, there's these things that people say and do, but they're trying to sell you something. My wife and I were looking to get our garage door fixed, and these people keep on texting me fucking deals and surveys, and I hit stop sending shit, and which is what they told me to do, and they still were sending me shit. And they were just overly fucking, trying to work you. Like, I just hate that shit. Like, I mean, I'm not, I know what you're doing. Like, you think I'm fucking stupid? I got a message from somebody, and they were like, oh, I'm really sad. Sorry to hear about your tooth, but you said something about a parasite cleanse. What are you doing? And, like, don't ask me for more. Like, I give here. Like, I give everything that I have. In terms of information, I don't withhold anything. I don't tell people about physical stuff because health remedies. I'll talk about my thing maybe on Spotify if it goes well. You'll see how this tooth thing ends. But I don't tell people what I'm doing because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a healthcare person. People I just don't share shit like that. And I used to. YouTube made it hard to do with COVID. But, I always make it clear, you do your own research, right? But I don't have anything yet. Like I'm looking into doing the parasite thing, which I said. But I had multiple people ask me, like there's just takers out there. This is a person that was asking for something special or extra for like something to do with gratefulness, just these kind of things. Takers. I mean, it's just, like always asking for more. You give them some, they ask for more. They never give back, and, maybe it's just they want to be, fed. That's what I'm talking about with this whole video. There's just this element there. They don't do anything, and my channel's dying, right? How about help them somehow figure out a way to help with that? In some way where you're not, I don't even have to be conscious of it, this thing is, people are benefiting from it. And it's slowly dwindling. My view count's going down. My money's, non-existent. These things. And so, I already gave it the office. Don't ask me for more shit. Like that's, time is a commodity. That's what I was saying to my wife about these fucking multiple texts I'm getting from this fucking place. This, I'm like, stop wasting my fucking time. I don't want to be, we were on a conversation. Guy's like, so you got chickens, and he wants to have a whole conversation about chickens, like it's gonna make me feel like I know the guy. I'm like, it's just pissing me off. You're wasting my fucking time, motherfucker. Just get to the fucking point, right? I just, it's just, most of this stuff, there's so much bullshit out there. It's time wasting bullshit. Like there's, time is precious, and people will kind of see that when things go south and everyone realizes what fucked we are. And then they'll be like, oh, I wasted all my time on fucking Epstein and bullshit like that for nothing, right? Like it's just, who gives a shit? Like the people that are top of the system are corrupt. We're going in the wrong direction. And at some point the system will be, taken down in some way. And the majority of people will just give up and curl up in the fetal position and just, pray for the angels to take them away. Because they have no ability to adjust and adapt to what's coming. And so they've put no effort into, bettering themselves and understanding things on a conscious level, and just are trying to bend reality to their desires. And that's always fucked. It's always ends up, getting slapped in the face with reality, because death is waiting for us all, right? And there's, the death of a system, there's the death of the, whatever, the country, there's all these things, right? And then there's the personal death. Everything ends, and you can't count on anything because everything's temporary. And it's the way that God made it, because stagnation isn't there. You're forced to change, right? You're forced to adapt. You're forced to, to get out of your comfort zone. But anyways, let me wrap this one up here and get into the other stuff. Okay, so I copied a few things from the TV, and let me start here because this is hilarious. I got a bunch of stuff to get to, Don Lemon, some other stuff, a lot of stuff with a few little things about Trump, but just all funny stuff today. It's mostly a funny day.
He is a podcasting trailblazer. He was once President Barack Obama's secret weapon as a speechwriter. And as you just heard, he's brilliant in helping us understand exactly what the mission is in this political moment. He's also wickedly funny. You don't want to miss this one. Scan the QR code on your screen and subscribe to MSNBC Premium to listen to the conversation right now if you want to. One more break for us. We'll be right back.
Holy fuck. YouTube, MSNBC has a premium. I think they're changing MSNBC now to just MS, which is weird because that means multiple sclerosis. I don't, I thought I heard somebody say that somewhere, but they're pushing this podcast bullshit. And Ari Meebler goes on Don Lemon's, which I have, I haven't watched it yet, but I have that because that'll be something special. And I think they're doing it because they're trying to get in on Don Lemon's audience. But they're charging $3 a month for fucking MSNBC Premium. Like, how do people pay for that? Like, they're always trying to copy what we do and the alternative media does. But this is just hilarious. MSNBC has fucking premium.
I think is the answer there. Caitlin Polans, thank you very much for your reporting on this morning. Kate? This morning, states are now pushing back after President Trump announced yesterday he will be signing an executive order aimed at banning mail-in ballots nationwide ahead of the 2026 midterm. Trump has long blamed mail-in ballots for his 2020 election loss. It's a topic that he says actually came up during his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday.
Vladimir Putin, smart guy, said you can't have an honest election with mail-in voting. And he said there's not a country in the world that uses it now.
Are you seriously taking election advice from Vladimir Putin? This is classic. This is great. There's a lot more here. Both sides are fucked on this thing.
Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots.
Several countries do use mail-in balloting for their elections.
Several countries use it? You're trying to say us that several countries still use mail-in ballots? That's what you're trying to say? Several countries, the thousands of countries there are out there. I don't even know how many countries there are, right? 195 countries. But there's smaller, there's so many regions and provinces, whatever it is, right? There's 7 billion people. And out of almost 200 countries, you're saying several countries still use mail-in ballots, right? In America that started democracy. Benjamin Franklin found some Native American tribes that had democracy. And he said, if these savages can do it, why can't we? You can go look that up. I think that's accurate. If my memory serves me correctly. That's part of it. But America was the first country to, push for this democracy. Democracy sucks. Because people, no matter what you want to say, and people were better back then. People had more common sense. People were more functional. But, there's just a lot of dumb fucking people out there that are incapable of, even amongst the elite people, educated people, there's a lot of low-functioning, degenerate people. And so, for a democracy to work, you need good people. And we don't have that. We have people who are, they're showing their worst versions of themselves. And that, that creates a bad system, and then the system creates worse people, and it just goes, everything degrades from there. The system gets worse as the people get worse, and as the people get worse, the system gets worse, right? But in all that, America started, what we now know as modern-day democracy for the most part. And, there's these monarchies and things, at least in terms of the Western world. And we're going to be like one of the few countries that still use mail-in ballots, right? And not that computer voting is any less hackable. Computer voting is just, they had this thing called the Kill Shot. It was on HBO, a documentary about, they thought Trump was going to try to rig the election for himself. And Nancy Klobuchar and all these Democrats were worried about the election. And they brought in all these hackers, or there's these hackers that having some kind of convention in Vegas, and they brought them the voting machines, and they all showed different ways to hack these machines. And so there's always going to be cheating as long as people are, voting in democracy. That's just a joke anyway. But no, we don't need mail-in ballots anymore when you could just vote from your fucking phone, right? Any number of ways they could make it really easy to vote if they want to do that. But Trump is, this isn't about Trump wanting fair elections. It's about Trump realizing he got fucked in 2020.
And election experts have been very clear that there is no evidence of widespread mail-in ballot fraud or widespread voter fraud, period.
This is just fucked. It doesn't really matter because there's corruption. Someone's cheating. Everyone's going to try to cheat. Someone's going to cheat better. Someone's going to win at cheating. Or it's just going to be rigged in general by the powers that be, whatever it is, right? But there's just no fair and free elections anywhere. And even if it isn't, even if the voting was meticulously done, they handpicked the candidates. They had Kamala and Trump were handpicked by the powers that be. There's nobody out there that's going to do any real damage or any real change to the status quo. Okay, this video isn't going to be so much about Trump. I want to get to some stuff about Don Lemons, which is in a way about Trump. Everything in the news comes back to Trump, but Let's start with this here.
Tonight, an extraordinary scenario floated by the president. Donald Trump now says that he is not ruling out putting American boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you rule that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved, but there'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe, but we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
That was during his meeting with Zelensky and European leaders who all stressed the importance of guarantees for Ukraine's security. Now, Trump did not commit to anything in particular, right? Nothing.
Because he never does. Trump never commits. Trump says, we'll see. This is, I used to ask my dad, my dad kind of promised to take me on safari when I was a kid. Like when I was a kid, I used to, want to be a naturalist. I want to talk about that more extensively. That's something that'll go in the Journey series. But, I was really into animals. I used to read about animals all the time. I wanted to go on safari. Study, things in Africa, lions and zebras and leopards and various types of, whatever it was. All the different animals I was into. And my dad said, when you get to a certain age, we'll go. Now, my dad got seasick when we went deep-sea fishing with my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. My dad had to take Dramamine, which was some sort of pill to prevent nausea. We went on airplane flights, and, he had all kinds of physical issues, hemorrhoids, and, he wasn't the adventurous type. And my parents were old when they had me. My older brother was 17 years older than I was. My parents were in their 40s and 50s, when I was a kid. I really don't know how the exact difference in terms of their, whatever. I could figure that out, I suppose. But my parents were old. They were, and my dad was no way going to go on safari, and we didn't have the money for it. He was a guidance counselor, and, But he figured that by the time I got old enough, I wouldn't want to do it anymore. I don't know what my dad wasn't all that, but he would just say, we'll see, or whatever it is, because he didn't want to say no. But we'll see was basically a no, right? And that's what Trump does on a much bigger level. And like I said, when he got elected, nobody really knew what he was going to do. And Trump doesn't even know what he's going to do, because he can be pulled one way or another. He's not he doesn't have any, dogma or belief system. He's not religious. He's not, political in any way. He was going to give away the guns. I mean, I have that clip of maybe I have a meme here.
And we haven't had them, and I'm talking Democrat and Republican presidents. They have not stepped up.
Mr. President, the difference is this. There's not a person in West Virginia that believes that you're not going to defend their Second Amendment rights. Not a person. With you taking a lead on something like this, it gives them the comfort that something reasonable in this.
So that's the first part, because what he says there is very important. Well, the first thing Trump says, no one else got it done, which is a huge thing for Trump. He's going to say it again up here, so I'll wait to comment. I'll comment on that there. But him saying, Joe Manchin saying that West Virginians, if it comes from you, they'll trust it. When it comes from a Republican, they'll say, all right, yeah, this guy won't grab our guns. And, Trump's going to say this thing. We'll get into it in a second, where he's going to say, first we get the guns first. But, this is like when Obama went after whistleblowers or was doing warlike things, and the Democrats were like, well, Obama wouldn't be a warmonger, so Obama's a good guy. This is the same thing. That, that's the dangerous part about Trump, because Trump isn't a Republican, and he doesn't give a shit about these things, and he's not thoughtful, or he doesn't do research. He just takes a quick position on something, hearing very little about it, knowing almost nothing about it. And then he sticks to that position because he thinks he's God, and whatever he thinks has to be great because he's the best, right? But here he says, first we get the guns.
Conservatives.
But take the guns first, go through due process second.
Take the guns first and go through due process second. Holy shit. He actually said that shit, right? He fucking said that shit.
Conservatives.
But take the guns first, go through due process second.
So it starts off here.
Are nothing new. I asked for just a list of, you look at Columbine, Colorado, Bill Clinton was president. Virginia Tech, George Bush. Fort Hood, Sandy Hook, San Bernardino, Pulse nightclub, and so many more.
So one of the things that Trump loves is his signature like personality trait. You hear him say it all the time about Joe Biden couldn't get it done. No president in history has gotten this done. These things, he loves to do things other people can't or wouldn't have done, right? Or they couldn't do. There was a time when Trump was really popular. He went on David Letterman, and David Letterman was gushing over the guy because Trump took over the Central Park had an ice skating rink, and these people had butchered it and did a horrible job. And Trump somehow came in. This is a young Trump, right? Like 40 years ago. And Trump came in and with whatever Trump was doing, and he was able to do it at a lower cost to the city. And he took on this project, and David Letterman was praising him for, saving the ice skating rink, right? This iconic thing in Central Park. And Trump loves that shit, being able to do things cheaper and better and faster, Operation Warp Speed. And they say it'll take 2 years and I can do it in 6 months. Like, that's Trump's stuff. No other president's ever been able to do this. And so all you have to do is say, all these other presidents failed, but none of them could do it. And Trump will immediately try to do that, especially in his first term, when he really wanted to prove himself to everybody. And so he's doing this with gun control because he doesn't give a shit about the political ramifications. He just cares about everyone going, hey, Trump did something no one else could do, because that's his big thing. You can see it because he talks about it all the time.
It's ridiculous. But maybe we could make it much more comprehensive and have one bill instead of 15 different bills that nobody knows what's happening.
If we can get 60 votes for it, Mr. President,
I think you can. Honestly, I think, look, I really believe this is one of the things where you can actually get the 60 votes, and maybe easily. Diane, do you have something?
Well, I do, Mr. President. You probably know this, but I became mayor of San Francisco as a product of assassination. I've been the victim of terrorist groups. The department gave me a weapon. They taught me how to shoot it, and we proceeded through the 1970s that way. What I've watched and seen is the development of weapons that I never thought would leave the battlefield, that are out on our streets. And the latest and newest, Mr. Chairman, is the AR-15.
Kaboom.
It's got a lot of assets to it, and it's misused. And it tears apart a human body with the velocity. And I've watched the school shootings in particular, which you pointed out. And I thought Sandy Hook, and I'm delighted that Senator Murphy is here today. We thought Sandy Hook would be the end, and he and I introduced another assault weapons bill after the first one. We didn't succeed with it, but the killings have gone on, the number of incidents have gone up.
Okay, so it goes on. She talks about this quite a bit, and this is, I'm just giving her some framework. So Trump then gives her a ghoulgasm here.
That is more than we lost for brave troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so just doing something on this background check issue and using that as a base, and then I would like to add some of these other things we've talked about, I think would make a major difference.
So if you could add that to this bill, that would be great, Diane. If you could add what you have also, and I think you can, into the bill.
Yeah. Joe, are you ready?
Can you do that, Joe?
That was the ghoulgasm that I spoke of, right? I found it. I was looking through, I was trying to find the Joe Manchin thing, which I think is coming up here. But this is the ghoulgasm. Watch it again. She says she wants Diane Goulstein's stuff to go into the bill. And, remember, she died with $110 million worth of assets and all that stuff.
I think would make a major difference.
So if you
not
could
just
add that to this bill, that would be great, Diane. If you could add what you have also, and I think you can, into the bill.
Joe, are you ready?
Can you do that? Joe, can you do that? Pat, can you add some of the things? You're not going to agree with me.
If you help.
Well, no, I'll help, but can you add what Amy and what Diane have? Can we add them in? And I know you can add what John has.
So, I call this Diane Feinstein having a ghoulgasm. So, I want to just comment on what I just showed you, the clip of him and Diane Feinstein. But I usually don't get, my mind doesn't get blown, but, I'm usually pretty not surprised by shit. But I looked up my dad. My dad was 45 when he had me. So I was a baby, when I was born, my dad was 45. And so that explains a lot, because by the time I was 15, he was 60, which is roughly my age. And that's why he retired when I was a senior in high school. Now it all kind of makes sense to me. So my parents were just kind of beaten down and, old. I mean, it's kind of unthinkable to be, like, I would not want teenage kids now, right? I mean, just, even with my kids being in their 20s, I mean, it's. So anyway, that just makes a lot more sense. So, Trump did this thing with Diane Feinstein. I don't have a meme of it, but I covered it in another video. He also did this with asset forfeiture. And eventually he got hit with asset forfeiture when they tried to bang him for all those things to do with the documents and stuff at Mar-a-Lago. But, this he didn't understand what was wrong with asset forfeiture, and he was all on board with gun control because he doesn't know anything. Like, he doesn't know what Republicans stand for. He came in as a president, and he knew less than the average citizen who's into politics. Because Trump doesn't read about things. He doesn't listen to people. He doesn't fucking know shit, right? He's not well informed. He wasn't well informed as a businessman, and certainly not as a politician. So he didn't know that the NRA was big into gun control. He didn't know any of that shit, right? I mean, it seems like fucking mind-boggling, but it's true. And so, he's very ignorant of all that kind of shit, and he gets very little information. He makes very impulsive decisions on, really bad intuition and limited to no information and almost always one-sided information. And so Trump doesn't know what the fuck he's doing or what he's going to do or what he's going to do. And he likes to keep people guessing. It's kind of a negotiation tactic. But there is a chance he'll put American soldiers in Ukraine, which means if the Russians fire on American soldiers, we're at war. It's World War III. We're at war with Russia. And, Russia really doesn't have much of a chance unless they go nuclear. And so that's where the nuclear war could come from. I mean, there's all these different ways it can come, and it's going to come one way or another.
Specific, but it marks a significant shift for the president, who campaigned on America first and promised to keep U.S. forces out of foreign conflicts. And already those comments and the developments, which are still frankly happening as we are sitting here, are reverberating in MAGA world. So Zelensky has said that part of the security guarantees will be that they would be able to purchase $90 billion in U.S.
Yeah, Trump doesn't give a shit about anything he promised you. So, we don't need to see any more of this stuff. But, the MAGA people are, of course, going to go off. They're already pissed about, Trump might be a Democrat by the end of this thing. Trump might convince the Democrats that he might go all, in for the Democratic stuff. Who knows what he's going to do? Because he doesn't fucking have any, he just will chameleon himself into whatever he has to do to sell his bullshit, right? Okay, so here it is here.
The cable news network MSNBC, which has Rachel Maddow and Ari Melber and others as personalities and is a favorite of liberals, is getting a new name. It will be known as My Source for News, Opinion, and the World.
So MS Now. MS is Biz Magazine and multiple sclerosis. And so now it's going to be MS Now. My Source for News, Opinion, and the World. It's my source. And then, of course, they're going to charge you. It's going to be MS Now Premium.
Or MS Now for short. It's all something that was ordered by NBC Universal as part of the corporate divorce between it and some of its cable companies, which are forming a new company known as Versant. MSNBC is building a new news organization with its own reporters and some of its own people, and NBC News has been a little bit nervous about having its more straight news report associated with MSNBC's more liberal bent. President Trump calls MSNBC MSDNC, as a matter of fact. The change will take place later this year, and the NBC Peacock is being removed from the logo of MSNBC and all the other cable networks.
Good for them. Way to suck even worse. And so, it just sucks so bad. There's nothing more to say about that. My source, news, opinion, and world, just brutal. Okay.
Well, we're fighting fire with fire. Donald Trump is not screwing around. He's trying to rig the next election in the midterms. There's a reason members of the Trump team sent me a Trump 2028 hat with a note. Is they're not screwing around, and we can no longer screw around either.
They sent him a hat with a note. That shows he's not screwing around. There's a hat you got a hat and a note? Wait, I can understand a hat, but you got a Trump hat and a note? What was the note? What did the note say? We're not screwing around? And you're taking that seriously, right? This guy is such a piece of shit.
That was California Governor Gavin Newsom telling Democrats they need to fight fire with fire in combating Trump and the GOP's redistricting efforts. Newsom has been on the offensive this week against Trump, repeatedly trolling him on social media by mimicking the president's often used all-caps screeds on Truth Social, including today's brutal response to Trump's bizarre...
Donald Tiny Hands has written his autobiography this morning. Unfortunately, low IQ, he spelled it wrong. Beta. Soon you'll be a fired beta because of my perfect, beautiful maps. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then his name there. And then he said, Bella. So I'm not sure what that was about.
Bella post by writing in all caps, Donald Tiny Hands has written his autobiography this morning. Unfortunately, low IQ, he spelled it wrong, beta. Soon you will be a fired beta because of my perfect, beautiful maps. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And just a few hours ago, Newsom filed a FOIA request to investigate what he calls the Trump administration's misuse of federal law enforcement at his redistricting press conference, saying...
Anyway, so the he wants the Democrats to act like Trump. Like he thinks by acting like Trump, he's going to somehow beat Trump, right? I mean, it's a little bit funny, the trolling. Gavin Newsom sucks, but it's a little bit funny. But it's not going to do anything. So let's go to Don Lemons here. Okay, so Gavin Newsom, he posted this. There's Kid Rock, Hulk Hogan up in heaven for some reason. You really think Hulk Hogan's in heaven? And Tucker Carlson, who's, not so big a fan of Donald Trump now. And they're praying over Gavin Newsom. He's used AI to substitute his picture for Trump's. Kind of a little bit funny. No real value. Not really intelligent. And Don Lemon does his thing. He plays a little song here. He plays Sweet Home Alabama. And then he points to, oh, yeah, oh, smart. That's pretty smart. I tap my lips. Yeah, tap my head. This is smart. He's playing 5G chess. So, I mean, he's just got the worst videos. But I was like, hey, didn't I watch this before? And I'm like, I think I made fun of this before, but I didn't because here, watch this. Newsom is on fire right now with his tweets trolling the president. Is his strategy effective? It's the same thing. So they've taken the same video clip of Don Lemon doing this. It's probably his most embarrassing clip, and everything the guy does is embarrassing. He's just a dope. And they use different music, but the same video, and they just substitute this picture. I see, but yeah, and so, it's just so bad. It's just so fucking bad. They reusing this. Like, you should bury the thing. I mean, isn't there some quality control over there? Someone going like, you look like a fucking Mo. Like, why are you doing this? You can see the picture's different there, right? You see that it's a Time magazine with Gavin Newsom on there instead of Trump. And so they're just substituting Gavin Newsom's tweets and using the same dopey frickin' Don Lemon's video. Rules for thee, not me. Trump mail-in ballot voting. So this is him again, now wearing his fake glasses.
Did you hear what Donald Trump just said?
We're going to stop mail-in ballots because it's corrupt. You know, when you go to a voting booth and you do it the right way and you go to a state that runs it properly.
By the way, Donald Trump voted by mail.
Boom. He delivered boom.
Did you?
So he's just so horrible. I mean, this is what they got out there. This is they're pushing this back. They're pushing this, this is the pushback they're giving to Donald Trump. Like, it's totally ineffective. I mean, the people who already hate Trump maybe will watch this crap. MS Now and all the stuff, Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom's, wanting to get his nomination. So he's starting to take on Trump in a way. Like, he clearly wants to be president after running California into the ground. And his, the Democrats had this stupid thing on the Obamas. When we go, Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high, which was, that's not what happened. I mean, they tried to go low, but they suck at it. Donald Trump is a master wallowing in the mud. And his people are into it, where liberals and educated people who vote Democrat like to think of themselves as above the fucking bullshit that Donald Trump does. And if you start doing his bullshit, you're going to alienate smart people. But either way, it's just, who gives a shit? Like, I mean, Donald Trump isn't running for president. There's the midterm elections, and then he's out. And then the Republicans got nothing, and neither do the Democrats. And it's going to be a shit show in 2028. I mean, even worse now, because, it's going to be the end of the Donald Trump era. So there's a video clip of Ari Biebler and Don Lemon together. I thought Don Lemon was showing a clip of Ari Biebler going on his show, but it was Don Lemon. I already showed you clips of him going on Ari Biebler's show on MSNBC. And he's had a few, like he's gone on Jen Psaki show and Ari Biebler. When he first had that thing with Elon Musk, he went on that show with Aaron Burnett, which is CNN. But most of the time, MSNBC is celebrating the guy that Rachel Maddow destroyed in the ratings. And, he took a $24 million payout from CNN just to go away. So I was going to show you that, but it's just the same crap that we saw before. Don Lemon's. I can show you more Don Lemon's, when I'm in the mood to mock him or whatever. So this thing with my dad, the weird thing is, I kind of knew that he was in his 40s, maybe I was a kid. I kind of had a sense. I mean, obviously there are birthdays and things. But I never really understood it because I hadn't reached that age myself, right? Like, I knew my parents were older than the average parents, right? I knew they were, older. But, and I was the youngest kid. My brother's 17 years older than me. So, I had a sense of it. But it really didn't hit me till I looked it up now. That when I was 10 years old, my dad was 55. When I was 15 years old, he was 60. I'm 61 now. And, I'm in much better shape than my dad was, but still, it's just, he was really old. And my mom was a couple years younger than him. But it kind of explains a lot, But anyways, let me wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day, and be grateful.